Good evening, Morai Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of our Shiur on Mesillat Yesharim. We are starting Perek Gimal, which is Beveur Chelkei HaZehirut. We spoke about the first topic that the Mesillat Yesharim discusses of Zehirut. Again, a quick chazara that this is a sefer based on a braita in Masechet Avodah Zarah on page 20, Tav Chaf. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would say that the Torah brings a person to Zehirut, Zehirut brings to Zerizut, and that brings you to Nekiut, a step-by-step ladder of ascending towards the levels of Kedusha, getting closer to Hashem, and self-refinement, self-building, which the Ramchal used to basically establish his world and all-time famous Sefer Mesillat Yesharim. So we spoke about what Zehirut is, and now he's going to explain what are the different, how do you explain it? What are the different parts of Zehirut? And he writes, Hine, harotzeh lefakeach al atzmo. Zehirut we mentioned and defined that it is a certain vigilance and being completely alert of things that you do. We spoke about how 95%+ of things that we do is mindless, which is crazy. We went through the hours of a person's life, and if you tell me that 1,000 hours, which is more than about 40 days of consecutive hours, it will be only less than 2 days that you are actually alert. And that's not talking about sleeping and not talking about the other activities of eating and so on and so forth, right? We spoke about the fact that the person makes 35,000 decisions every day. And how many of them do you actually making a decision? Weighing in and weighing out things and making a proper decision. Very little, very few. Sometimes we could be going to sleep at night and say, what did I do today? Especially if it's a Sunday, it's a off day. And you're like, how did it become night? Like, that's a whole day. And how many of these days do we have? It's not a whole lot. You think about it, we've been thinking a lot about the World Trade Centers recently because of the atrocities that we witnessed in the past week, right? Does anyone, people who are older than 85, that like myself, that remember that day? Anyone remembers that day? I remember exactly where I was. And now you think about it, you say, it was not like a blink of an eye ago. It was like yesterday. And yet that's 20 years ago, plus. Right now is what, 23 years ago almost? And it's a blink of an eye. And that's a lifetime. Another 23 years, where am I going to be? How old am I going to be? Retired, And that's how it works. Life goes by so quickly, and you either have a grip on it, or you don't have a grip on it. And to the degree that a person has a grip on his life, to that degree he's living a life. The life is not living him. It's not like you're not just going through motions of waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night because you're a human being that gets tired and then gets rejuvenated. And then the days are just passing you by. But you're actually making your imprint in life when you have a hold of your life. The time is yours. You make decisions. You sometimes say, I'm not doing this. Even though that's very enticing, I'm not doing it. Because I have to do this. I have a focus in my life. I have a goal in my life. It's my family time right now. And my family is my priority. But then for that, you have to have priority. For that, you have to have goals. You can't just go through life, as a pastime. We'll see how it goes. Now I'm going to make a lot of money. So that's like a very vague thing. A lot of money, and then what? Let's imagine you hit the jackpot and now you have a lot of money. You know what happens to jackpot winners? 85% will lose the whole thing in 5 years. They're divorced, and many of them, they're attacked in their families, and they're a mess after 5 years. Based on a basic research, you could run it yourself. There are a few individuals that they already had money before, they know how to handle money and so on, so that helps their resources in a magnificent way. But most of them, 80% of them, depending on what research you read, all of them are above 75-80%, that they end up worse than they were before, because a lot of money is not, if you don't have a goal and a focus and a direction in life, it's not going to necessarily be good. So that we said is about Zehirut, being a constant state of vigilance and alertness, mindfulness. We want to call it whatever buzzword you want to use. Now, how do we get there? How do we get there? That's $1 million question. What is exactly the detailed breakdown of Zehirut and the way to get there? So says the Mesillat Yesharim, Hine, harotzeh lefakech al atzmo, a person that wants to be vigilant, wants to be on top of his game. You need two things to keep your mind on. Ha'achat, first, sheyitbonen ma'u hatov ha'amiti, sheyivchar bo ha'adam, v'hara ha'amiti shayanus mimenu. The analogy that I give for this always, which is very close to reality, is a GPS. You want to get from point A to point B, you use a GPS, right? When you want to get to a destination in life, also you have to have a GPS. Now, what elements do you need for, I call it the God's positioning system. What do you need for a GPS to operate? You need to have, you have to turn on your location, right? If you don't turn on location, the GPS doesn't know where you are, then forget about it, right? You have to know where you are. Then the first thing you have to punch in is a destination. You have to know where you're headed. Where do you not want to be, right? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be there. I want to be there, right? Then you have to have a map, a comprehensive map, to be able to choose the shortest path from point A to point B. And then fourth and final thing is you have to always keep satellite connection to know where, check yourself against where you are, against where you're going. And if you go to a tunnel and it says satellite lost, then there goes. It loses its effectivity. And life also is like the first thing, it says, you have to know what is, if you want to be careful, being careful only means anything if you know what's good and what's bad. Then you can be careful from the dangers, careful from the bad things, right? I have a family that their thing was Rahbar family, the Dr. Rahbar. They were very much involved with the new findings and so on, and he was actually sent from Iran to United States of America and to other places, and he was working with radioactive things, like handling them, because they didn't know the dangers of those things, and he died. He died, his wife died, because they're doing a lot of good things for humanity, but they were not told, and nobody really knew the effects that it could have on a person, and it killed them. Both of them got cancer, and the second time he went there, he was already sick, and when he came back after a few months, he passed, right? Young. Why? Because he was handling something that killed him, and while he was handling it, he thought he was doing the greatest good to humanity. If you don't know what's good, what's bad, you could be handling something bad, thinking it's the greatest thing in life, and then you have to suffer the consequences, because even if you think the best thoughts in the world, when you put down some poison, the poison is going to burn. It's the reality of what happens when you drink poison, right? So that's the example of it is like Lashon Hara, right? Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu. Did Miriam love Moshe Rabbeinu? Of course she did, right? She gave her life up for Moshe Rabbeinu. She was the one that protected him when he was a baby. She waited on him. She was the go-between. She did everything for Moshe Rabbeinu. But when you speak Lashon Hara, that's poison. Avera is in that sense. And she had to suffer sarat and wait in an embarrassing moment of her life, a whole week outside the Machaneh, until she joined back and she was healed. You have to first determine what is good and what is bad. Some of it is objective, some of it is subjective. Some things could be for someone not so bad, and for someone else it could be very bad. If someone is prone to a certain thing, they could really give an example. For instance, if a person is have an addictive personality. So digital things, watching things, getting involved with, it could become detrimental for him, for his life. It may not be as detrimental for someone else. And so on and so forth, right? So you have to first determine what is good, what is bad. And now I want to choose good and have a purpose in my life. So it says the Mesillat Yesharim, Vashniya, that's the first thing you have to do. The second is, Ala Ma'asim Asher Hu Oseh. So one of them is more of a bird's eye view of what is my path in life, what things I want to stay away from, what things I want to do. And then the second, that's goals and aspects of your GPS. The second thing is, what do you actually do in life, right? Now that you have defined what is good, what is not good, say, okay, I'm going to check myself against this list of information. What I do in my life, is it good, is it not good? We do a whole lot of things. Again, if you ask Google, they'll tell you that a person makes 35,000 decisions a day, right? Now, not all of those are decisions that you mindfully make. Right? The brain of a person makes a whole lot of decisions while you even drive. You're making hundreds, if not thousands of decisions. That's why driving is a very draining activity, right? Because your brain is measuring distances, making decisions, doing a lot of things automatically on autopilot that you may not realize. We're not talking about all those, but the decisions that a person makes deliberately. So the things that I end up doing, how much of it is on autopilot? When I go through my day, I say, okay, I did this. I'm not so proud of that. I did this. Pretty embarrassing. I did that. Okay. It's fine. So how many of them was completely under your control? If you don't check yourself against your values in life, you could live, they have this famous story that the Rishonim or the Rambam likes to say this about one of the philosophers, the Greek philosophers, the highest of high, right? Aristotle was the known genius of a man. The Rambam writes he was the highest capacity of human mind that you can imagine. That's a pretty good compliment, right? And yet, the story goes that his students found him once when they barged in, when they came unexpected, they found him eating a live bird. Which is a very unethical thing to do. So I told him, Rabbeinu, what are you doing? He said, look, when I'm in the university, I am your teacher, I'm a professor, I do ethics. It's not necessarily my brain, it's not necessarily a thing to what I do at home, right? Which again, there's a lot to talk about this, but of course, a person every one of us could live like that. But you have a lot of knowledge of the Torah, a lot of knowledge of ethics, and things that we think is right and wrong, but we find ourselves not necessarily living bound to that. Right? For some people, it could be levels of Shmirat HaMitzvot, right? Shmirat HaMitzvot, that's not for me, right? I remember I had a neighbor, when I used to live in the East Coast, and once we were having a Sudat Shabbat together, and his parents were invited as well. And the father was telling me how he was a halacha teacher in a conservative school before he became a Baal Tshuva. Halacha teacher, he would teach halachot Shabbat. And he said, for me, becoming a Baal Tshuva was fairly easy because I knew all the halachot. I just had to switch from it doesn't apply to it applies, right? And I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, he was a very funny individual, just trying to humor us, of course, to some extent. But I think we do that a lot of times as well. Like, this doesn't apply to me, or we know that it should apply, but we just take a pass on it. I shouldn't be lashon hara, but. What does that mean exactly? What does that mean? I mean, you know that it's probably lashon hara if you say there shouldn't be lashon hara, right? Or people say he wouldn't really want me to tell you this, but I mean, if you know he wouldn't want you to tell him that, so then don't say it. That's not an ethical thing to do, because you're betraying a relationship. So we do it, we don't think. We know it's not necessarily the right thing, but we do it because we're not thinking. We don't cross-examine our actions with our GPS in life. And then your mind could be going this way, completely straight and right and good, and the ma'asim stay just the same way, right? And could have the same person that said he shouldn't be lashon hara, but he's saying it when he's 75 also. and has gone through so many Yom Kippurs, and has heard so many Lashon Hara Shiurim, he could have even gone through the Chafetz Chaim's book once or twice, but it's never been checked, right? So ask people, how many people say Birkot HaShachar b'kavana? Who knows that they have to say it, but or daven b'kavana, or daven b'tzibur, b'minyan, or come on time, or be, careful with their human relationships, caring about their wives, their husbands, and being helpful at home. The old things that are biblical concepts. It's not even like Rabbi Akiva says in the Gemara, if you want to summarize and encapsulate the whole Torah, is in That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Hillel, who Rabbi Akiva was a part of his school, Hillel said it the same thing in different words. What's hated to you, don't do to other people. And that's the whole Torah. The Mefarshim, they struggle. Why is that the whole Torah? One of the major questions is, this is only Ben Adam L'Chavero. Maybe you could say it encapsulates all the Ben Adam L'Chavero. But how about the Ben Adam L'Makom? How about between man and God? And they say, look, the majority of the mitzvot in the Torah are Ben Adam L'Chavero. So if you want to represent the Torah, that would be a representation of the whole Torah. And again, especially with the day and age that you have connectivity and expectation of knowledge, right? People say that, it's like between me and you, but that's not right. We all know it's not right, but we all do it. Why? Because we never think. It's just what we do. And that's what Mr. Yesharim says in the second part, which he's going to explain, and perhaps this is going to become one of the core elements, one of the pillars that the entire Mesillat Yesharim is built on top, is going to be this second aspect, which he's going to explain in the next page right now. So it says Mesillat Yesharim, the second thing is, Al Maasim Asher Hu Oseh Lirot Imhem Michlal HaTov or Michlal HaRa. What do? You have to measure them. Think, is it good or is it bad what I'm doing? Cross-examine your thoughts and your values with what your actions are in life. Vezeh, and this by itself has two elements. B'shat ha'maaseh, v'shelo b'shat ha'maaseh. That's while you're doing something, you have to be mindful, this that I'm about to do, is it good or bad? And then, after you've done it, you go back and review, so what I did, was it right? Did I do a good job? Or not? V'shelo b'shat ha'maaseh. B'shat ha'maaseh, at the time that you do it, shelo ya'aseh shum maaseh mibeli she'yishkol oto. You shouldn't do anything without first measuring it up to your standards of life. V'yishkol otam k'mochen b'moznei ha'mishkal hazeh. So that's the thing that you do. V'shelo b'shat ha'maaseh, and not at the time of the action, means she'ya'aleh lefarav zichron kelal ma'asav, that you think a general thought of all the things that he did today, or this week, or whatever it is, and he should think about them and weigh them against and cross-examine them with his values. To find what is bad in them and push that away, and what is good in them and develop that. So, okay, this was amazing. This was amazing. I'm going to do it, right? So one of my friends is going, for instance, to hopefully things will be quiet down. He's going to call now all the families of people who have been involved with this, lost a family member, and so on and so forth. Because he connected with one that he knew, and he found that he was a source of tremendous chizuk for them. He's good with his words. He's a very caring, warm person, and now he's trying to do more of that. Find what's good and develop it. He's wishing to be able to go there soon and to go visit the families of these people, unfortunate situations that have happened. So that's finding the good, developing it, finding the bad, and eliminating it. And little by little, when you go through this fine-tuning, you become a better and better person by the day. Now, let's finish this. I want to say something. And if you find bad in them, then you think, and you research in your mind, how do I get rid of this? I have a bad habit. It's hard to get rid of bad habits, right? Bad habits are what, bring us negativity in our lives. But as they are, they're habits. It's hard to get rid of habits. So what strategy am I going to choose? How am I going to strategize to knock this out of my system, right? Again, the Art of Warfare, authored by
Art of War, Sun Tzu.
Right? Amazing. Right? I'm not saying he was not an amazing person at all, but the book is amazing. He says, if you know thyself, and if you know thy enemy, you could fight 100 battles without using one. You have to know yourself, and you have to know your enemy. Right? It's very apropos right now, knowing ourselves and knowing the enemy, especially knowing the minds of the enemy. But again, within the person we're talking, if you know thyself, you know who you are, your weak points, your shortcomings, your points of weakness, right? Everyone has their own points of weakness, right? I have a friend that for a while, Baruch Hashem, now he's worked out, he's doing amazing right now. But for a while, he was addicted to watching movies. Nothing bad necessarily. But his mind is wired as a kid, maybe like this, that it's like wasting hours and hours and hours and hours a day, becoming a zombie for a thing. So that was something that was extremely, maybe because of his childhood things, it was a difficult thing. It took him a year and a half to get rid of it, to strategize against it and what to do and what not to do. It was ruining his marriage, it was ruining his business, right? And again, you have to know thyself and you have to know thy enemy. To know the Yetzirah, how it operates, which we're going to speak about. Now, I want to just say for a moment that the second part is even more important than the first part. In other words, it's easier said than done to say, yes, let's check, think, be mindful, all these buzzwords. When you do something, you have to weigh it out a bit. The reality of life is, we start the day in the morning, and then we hit the sack at night, and we just do what we do. We're not automatically mindful because we did not grow up like that. And we haven't been trained like this, and people around us are not like that. So how in the world are you going to change that? The second thing is what gives a reality to the first one. It means when you sit, and he's going to focus on it in just a moment, when you sit at night, I say, okay, let's go through the day. I woke up at whatever it is, hour that I woke up, and I went through a whole day. Let's go step by step what I did in the morning, how I woke up, how I got into work, or the shul, whatever, tefillah, my relationships, my job, my business, my family, my kids, my wife, my husband, whatever it is. And you go step by step with a, fine combing through everything that you do, and you give grades to you grade yourself, so to speak. And you do that every night. You make a spreadsheet, you write on it, you drop on it. This is what I did back when I was maybe 15, started this. And you drop whatever it is, 50 things that you want to check yourself against. Those are your values, your things that you want to see yourself do, things that you want to stay away from. And every night you sit for 10 minutes and literally go through it and say, okay, this I get an A, I get an A+, I get an A-, I get a B, a C, a D, a F. And do it tomorrow night. Deliberately and genuinely. You know what happens? The first night you'll fail in most of them, because if you wrote them, it means that things that are on your mind, there are things that are your struggles. It's the tug of war, right? First night you fail. The second night, the third night, the fourth night, at some point you'll hit a moment that you're embarrassed. You're like, oh, what is this? I can't get a hold of myself. I can't even control myself. You feel that you are completely out of control. And that feeling of embarrassment is worth millions of dollars. Because you know what happens the morning after? As you're about to go on an autopilot and do things that you do, you got to catch yourself. You're going to say, I don't want to be embarrassed tonight. And then you start doing the first thing that he said. That Beshat Ma'aseh, when you're going through life, you're going to start becoming a little bit more mindful. A little bit more mindful. And then if you continue this, in a month time, mamash, in a month time, you'll be a completely different person. Completely different person. More sensitive, more vigilant, more alert, more careful, more productive. All those things. Because now your mind and your action, your bodies are aligned with each other. You know, in surgical things, when you do surgery or anything that needs like motor skills, like fine motor skills, one of the things that are very important is the eye and hand correlation. You have to be like good with your, and this is in a spiritual world. You have to have a mind and heart correlation. That things that are mentally important for you are things that actually trickle down in your life. That now I'm careful in those things, not just an intellectual, exercise. That this is the ethics of life, but it's nothing to do with me. So says the Yesharim, now that I explained to you this in abstract, I'll tell you that this is a Gemara Yudit. The Gemara says this in Masechet Eruvin Daf Yud Gimel. It's a very strange Gemara. One of the most strange Gemaras. You know what the Gemara says? They had a debate for over 2.5 years. Noach lo la'adam shenivra or noach lo la'adam shelo nivra. What does that mean? Was it better for man? It's a philosophical debate. Was it good that a person should be created? Very time appropriate in Parashat Bereshit now. Was it time? What was it? Was it kedai? Was it good for a human being to be created, or was it not good to be created? Right? Now this is strange because we just got finished saying in Perek Aleph how amazing it is to be Hashem created the world to give tova to a person. It's the amazing we just mentioned, and also on top of that is a very simple question. At the end of the day, God created man. So what are you debating? Was it good for him to be created or not? Or you're challenging God's decision? What kind of thing is that? Right? So what he means is like this. Of course, he's not talking about a tzaddik. He's talking about a regular person, generally speaking. When you're created in this world, and now you have been given the power of free will. Right? You could choose to be good. You could choose to be evil. Right? There's real evil people in the world, we have learned in past week. Right? And you could choose to be whatever you want to be. Now, the statistical things that happen to people actually have to do with the world. And whether or not it was good or not. Because if most people mess it up, then maybe, in a general sense, there's room to say it was better for a person not to be created. You put a pure neshama in this world and he goes and messes it up completely. That's not a good thing. And the Gemara actually says they concluded after over 2 years of debate, Noach le'adam shelo nivra. Better would have been a person should not be created. So Gemara says this, right? So v'achshav shenivra. But now that we are here, you know why the difference? Why even have this philosophical debate? Wait, who cares? The who cares of it is that now that you know you're in a danger. Now most people actually don't make it. Most people end up failing their life, right? Who was the first founding father of Walmart? Huh? So, does anyone remember the last 3 words that he said? Anyone remember? He was the fourth bigger wealth, right? He was the one of the wealthiest. He was worth back then. The $65 billion was money, right? I think it was worth $65 billion. You could ask Rabbi Google right now. Famously, and this is you do a Google search on him. It's on his page. This information is on his thing. The last 3 words that he said was, I blew it. I blew it. Because he was not with his family. He was just, the work consumed his life. Instead of working to live, he lived to work. And it consumed him. He became, those became the walls of his life. Right? The Walmart. It separated him from other people, from his own family, from his own children, spending time, appreciating life. A goy. But goyim also should have values in life. And he blew it. Right? Most people blow it. And now that you know most people don't make it, you be careful. You take care, because if you happen to smart people like him and many, many others, successful, quote-unquote individuals, it can happen to us too. Right? I'm not going to mention names. In a Sukkot of 11 years ago, I was with a very prominent person, a big Talmid Chacham, person that actually did a lot of good things with his life. And we're sitting together in the Sukkah after Kiddush when people went to wash, and I noticed that he's sitting there. He was in his upper 80s, and he was crying. He's crying. He's crying, speaking to himself, like in a moment of clarity, looking back at his life. So there's a person that passed away a year and a half after this. And he said, I so badly wanted to be a Talmid Chacham. He said, I so badly wanted to be a great Talmid Chacham. In other words, he was a big Talmid Chacham. But he was in his mind at that moment, going back through decades of his life, his aspirations, and all the things that he wanted to do. And evidently, he felt that he didn't get to anywhere close to that. And it was a moment of regret. It was painful to watch it. It's painful whenever I think about it. But it's the reality of life. Most people, at the end, they stand and they say, I blew it. Right? I took my son for his bar mitzvah to Eretz Yisrael, and we went to Sfat, to the old cemetery of Sfat, where Maran Bet Yosef is buried, with Arya Kadosh, Al Sheikh Kadosh. Tremendous. It's a very meaningful visit. And as we're walking in the Bet HaKvarot, I tell him, where is the richest place on earth? I said, what do you mean richest place? I was like, where's the richest place? So he tells me, Fort Knox, this, that. He's pretty informed about things that are there in the world. And I said, no. At some point, he got frustrated. I said, okay, you say it. I'm like, here. Standing on it right now. A cemetery. So you know how much goals and aspirations are buried here? How many Sfarim that were never written? That could have been, should have been. How many companies never started? And it could have been, should have been. How many families never built? People take their things to grave with them. Because they go on tangent in life and they don't match up their thing to actually what they should be doing. And all of those ideas, goals, Sfarim, books, companies, innovations, inventions, they all are buried there. It's the richest place on earth. You compare that with what humanity has done, most of it is in the ground. By far. I guarantee you. And that's because of this. Because we don't cross-examine to see where we're holding. And it's a scary thought, but again, we're talking to a bunch of men. And at some point, we man up. We're not just going to be patted on the back and say, you're doing great. Yeah, Baruch Hashem, we're doing great. But there's so much more if a person does this. Hazal say it would be better for a person not to take a chance and not be born. But now that you are born, Be careful. This is the rest of the Gemara. You should check your actions, and there are those who say you should feel out your actions. He's going to explain what the difference of those two things are. Says the Mesillat Yesharim. These two languages of the Gemara, they're two different separate things that are both very, very beneficial. Says the Gemara. Says the Mesillat Yesharim. Yefashpesh b'ma'asav means check your actions. What we just mentioned. You sit every night and say, okay, what did I do today? And you check it. You try to be real, not brutal, but real and honest. And find the good and the bad. And try to develop the good and eliminate the bad. Right? But says the Mesillat Yesharim, are there things that he doesn't want to continue doing that they are not aligned with the mitzvot of Hashem or with his goals in life? Anything of that category that you find, you burn them out. You eliminate them from your life. You come up with techniques and strategies to eliminate them. Sometimes all at once, sometimes gradually, depending on what it is. But the second language of the Gemara, yemashmish myself, feel it out. That's a fine comb. That's a much closer look at your deeds. And explains Mesillat Yesharim, this is not what's bad and let me eliminate it. This is, okay, I do this thing, I'm doing good. It's a good thing. I want to continue doing this. But how am I doing it? Chelek Rashi is there anything as a peniyah? Is there anything in that good thing that you're doing as a peniyah shelo tova? You're doing it for the wrong reason, right? You're doing it because of social fame or likes or it's not intrinsically good necessarily. The kavanah that you have, you're pushed by other people, other things, you're caring about other people. I've said this, and I think it's important for people to say it over and over and over again. If a person lives their life for other people, to the degree that you are doing things because of what people say or don't say, to that degree you're not living. A life of a person, a real meaningful life of a person, is their impression on the world and on themselves, and that impression is your actions, is the moment that you really live. When you make a decision based on your intellect, not because of, what is he going to say, what is he going to think, what is she going to think, that's your life. The moment that you stop thinking about doing the right thing and you're persuaded by what people are going to think about you, that's going to be the public opinion, so to speak. Those are moments that you're living for other people, not for yourself. It's not an expression of a person's life. So says the Mesillat Yesharim, there's something negative in that good thing that I want to continue this, but I want to perfect it. That's mishmush, a fine-tooth comb that you're going through and say, okay, I could do this a little better. It's like feeling out a beged, a garment, to see if it's good material, if it's durable, if it's strong, or is it rotten and low quality. Chalash o balui. The same way you touch, you feel your actions, to understand the details of it, the kavanah behind it, the way you're doing it, and so on. Until you purify it completely, right? So this is what he had to say. Now in the next paragraph, he sums up and says something very important. Klal hadavar, right? The sum up of what I told you is, a person should be checking and examining all of his actions. Kulam. And you have to pay attention to your goals and pathways in life. So it's your practical deeds that you do, and also in your long-term goal in life. gonna ask yourself the question: when I'm 75 and I want to take that family picture with my children and grandchildren, how is that picture gonna look like? What's my path in life, right? Or what Michael Josephson would say: a person has to live life backwards. He said, if you want to succeed in your life, you have to start with imagining you're a fly on the wall of a funeral home, attending your own funeral, listening to the eulogies. And it says, Michael Josephson, take a pen and paper, don't care about grammar, just write everything you want to hear, everything. Without order, without nothing. Just don't think about being a proper English, literature thing. Just write. Write until you have nothing else to write. Then you put down the pen and you read everything you wrote. You divide them to 3 categories. Those are your long-term goals. Now live life backwards. So he writes, right? That's the second thing that he says over here, which is the first thing he explained in the inside. What are my pathways in life? Where am I headed? How's my 75-year-old picture, family picture, going to look like? Right? For some of us, we're getting closer to that. And some of us, we're saying, oh, that's a long time. It's not a long time from now. It's not. Because the decisions you make now directly affect that picture when you're 75, 85. Says the Gemara, says the Mesillat. You have to eliminate things you don't want in your life. It's your life. It's your life. If you can't choose what you want and you don't want from your own life, then what is that your life then? Of course, you don't want any avera, any full negativity, but you want even fine-tuning all the negative aspects. Now here is Mesillat Yesharim talking. He says, okay, let me tell you my secret ingredient, says the Mesillat Yesharim. It says, you want to listen to me? Says the Mesillat Yesharim. Every single day, like a business person. Business people at the end of the day, they sit, certainly at the end of the week, certainly at the end of the month, certainly at the end of the year. You do a profit and loss balance sheet. Do you know anyone that doesn't do that in business? They should not be in business, right? They're constantly weighing out. I bought this for this much. I sold it for this much. This is the expenses, the storage, this. It's not kedai. Forget about it. Discontinue this. This, amazing. Continue it. Always weighing. Because otherwise you're going to be doomed. You have to set a time. It's not going to do it itself. If you don't say, okay, every night, 10 minutes before I go to sleep, I'm doing this. Or at night it's crazy with kids and stuff like that, I'll do it 10 minutes before I leave the office. But I'm not going to leave the office until I do it. I'm going to do it every single day, from 24 hours ago until now. It can't be just once, a little time I do it. Rosh Hashanah comes, Rosh Hashanah. No, it doesn't work like that. Every day. It can't be a scale that is once upon a time. It has to be something that's kavua. You do it every day. You do it in a serious way, and it's part of my life. Part of my life. Nobody succeeds in a diet. You know that? People will tell you most people don't. I'll tell you, no one does it. No one succeeds in a diet. Those people who succeed is because it's not a diet anymore. They had a moment in their life, either in the beginning of the diet or somewhere in the middle, they said, this is going to be my lifestyle. That's the difference. If it's diet, it's just a matter of when you're going to break it. If you see that ice cream every time, I'm like, then it's just a matter of time. Or that, whatever it is, shortening or whatever it is, it's really bad for your body. But if a person says, I'm not having it, it's not my life, I'm not having that, it's not what I have, I don't eat those stuff. Not because I'm diet, it's just not my lifestyle. That is the moment that switches from a failure to a success. And this is the same thing. If you make it kavod, it's my lifestyle. I check myself every day. I may miss a day here and miss a day, but I do it every day. I take my life seriously. And I'm talking to a goy. Forget about being a Jew. Like, if you want to be successful in life, you gotta do it. Some people, most successful people, start the day somewhere between 3:30 and 5 a.m. Most of them. I gave a shiur similar to this. One of my people, the day after, gave me a write-up of the top 35 successful people in the world. All of them, what they share is they start the day early. Now you have, here and there, you have one or two that they're different, but that's a pretty consistent thing. Why? Because it's a quiet moment. You get to think. You get to not be persuaded by other people or other things. Before the day starts, for most people, you're there, you're up, you're running, and you have clarity of mind. You want to do it in the morning? Do it in the morning. And at night, before you go to sleep and it's quiet, do it then. You do it 10 minutes before you want to come home from office, do it then. But make it kavua, bekviut gadol, ki rav hatoladahu. Says the Yesharim, I promise you, this has tremendous effect on your life. Tremendous effect, positive effect. And this is really a Gemara. Again, this is what the Yesharim does. He says it to you, and then he shows you how Chazal have said this in the Gemara already. And this also is in the Gemara Beferush. It's a Gemara in Masechet Baba Batra Daf Ayin Chet Amud Bet. The Gemara there says, Baba Batra 78b. Al kel yomru hamoshlim ba'u heshbon. The Gemara Darshins, what does that mean? Al ken yomru hamoshlim beYisram, those who rule over their instinct. Those people who are in control of their life. You know how they do it? I'll tell you how they do it. Ba'u v'nachashev cheshbono shel olam. They are the people who say, let us do an accounting on our life. Cheshbon hefsed mitzvah keneged schara u'schara v'ra keneged asa. What do I gain by having indulging in a pleasure that I know it's detrimental for me? The pleasure that I have is a 5-minute pleasure, and then I have to deal with it for the next whatever. So what do you gain? What do you lose? Right? That the weighing and the scale of a person's life is the way a person could be in charge and in control of their instinct and be a success story, right? Those who rule over their instinct and they're in charge and empowered to deal with themselves, making decisions. What you lose by doing a mitzvah versus the sachar. You may lose a little money, you may lose a little time, you may be a little bit uncomfortable, but what do you gain? You gain eternity. You gain eternity. Again, we mentioned this before. The smallest fraction that you could have spiritually is greater number than the greatest number that you could have in physical reality. And it's very simple because spiritual world is infinite. Olam Haba doesn't end. It's not like 80, 90, 120 years of time. It's infinite. So if you have 0.00000 on 50 zeros, 1 multiplied by infinity, the answer is always infinity. And you cannot cash in infinity in this world. So you lose a little bit, but you're gaining eternity, right? Versus the other way around, which would be foolish. You give into a temptation of Averah for a short-lived pleasure. Short-lived pleasure. And then you have to deal with the consequences of that forever. Right? And that's, again, we're not talking about Avirah, killing a person, versus like mitzvah, becoming Chacham Badia. Talk about small things even. Small things. Small things. Snoozing that alarm. Right? Things that are, the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. Always like that. The points of struggle are in small details. And that's where the growth is. Because ordinary people sometimes do great things, but great people always do ordinary things. Like, those ordinary things that you do is where your tug of war is. So you strengthen yourself a little bit. Now your struggle is here. The next time you have to do like this, and that's how you grow. If you do one time a big thing, then you fall right back down, because that does not define where you are in life. But those small struggles is what builds a person, small but consistent, once after another time, until it becomes nature. Now you're next level. Now you're level 2. And you have its own struggles on level 3, and you go up and up. That's how it works. And says, we can end with this. So you only will see the benefit of this after you do it. So says the Mesillat, and we're going to explain this next time, but Hashem says, it may seem to you as a very ordinary thing. Oh, sit down every day 10 minutes and check. So I guarantee you, you'll see what the difference it makes in your life after you do it for a while, for a month, for 2 months. You'll see what it does to a person, and then you'll appreciate how fundamental this is to human life, and you'll appreciate the details of how a person could grow, because that puts you in touch with your inner self, with your mind. And Be'ezrat Hashem, that's something that we will discuss, will continue in the weeks to come. Hazak Baruch. Can you raise your hand if you need?